that can feel, isn't it? Imagine that for an hour. Gosh, it'd be like eternity, you know? But in my time, thank you, Tommy, for the beard shout out. I've noticed Jason's a little short too lately, so I had to fill in for these two guys on this. But um, with tonight, I think when we hear that, we all think, yes, I want to live into the Great Commission. Yes, I want to be the person that God called me to be, no matter where I am, whether at work or my neighborhood or at church. But it's hard to be missional when work feels meaningless. It's hard to be on mission when I don't even like going there. It's hard to be on mission when I don't see the point. It's hard to be on mission when work's not satisfying. It's hard to be on mission when things don't fill me up. In fact, I look at everybody else and I think, well, that person could probably be on mission because they seem really fulfilled in their job. But my job feels meaningless. My work feels like hevel. The wisdom of Ecclesiastes uses this word hevel 38 times. 38 times. It's the most prominent word in the entire book, and 7 of those times it's paired up with this phrase in the ESV, striving after the wind. Wind chasing. Anybody's job feel like wind chasing? One of these, just to get a flavor for it, is Ecclesiastes 2:11. It says, "Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity." That's the word, hevel. All was meaningless and a striving after the wind. Everything was meaningless and wind chasing, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. You may not think that that's your reality. You may not think that's the place where you wouldn't have used that word prior tonight, hevel or vanity or meaningless. But I believe that anything and everything can become hevel. Anything and everything can become hevel. Just the other day, we were sitting outside a department store. I won't say what's the department store. I'll just tell you it was by Target. I was sitting in the van because my wife had run into the store, and this lady came out, and she had this little toddler kind of on her hip. And the worst thing happened that could possibly happen. If you have a little toddler, you know what this is about to be. She dropped her receipt, and the wind caught it, and it started blowing down the sidewalk. And she did like one of those like, and I'm watching this whole thing. I'm like, there's no way she can grab that like this. And so now she's got like this, and then like this. And then she's got the kids sideways, and the kids kind of like sliding out, so like the legs are flying, and all of a sudden she's like, and now she's at a full-on sprint, and this little kid is like galloping along with her like this. I'm like, she's going to drop this kid, and it's going to be a much bigger deal. I'm like, what is on that receipt? I don't know if it was a gift receipt or what, but I was watching her, and I thought, this is just comic to watch someone chase something that can't be caught. Imagine if that receipt wasn't there. That's the image for the word hevel. Chasing after the wind. What are you chasing at work? At least for this lady, she was going after something tangible. She was chasing after a receipt, but it almost cost her everything. She almost dropped the most precious thing in her life for the sake of a piece of paper. Hevel. Meaningless. Vanity. Wind chasing. Anything and everything can become hevel. I told you we just had a little baby. I've been spending a lot of time with our toddlers, and that means I spend a lot of time in diapers. Not me personally, changing diapers. I spend a lot of time cleaning, like sweeping our floor. I swept our floor 4 times the other day, just with those little brooms and trying to get up the crumbs because I'm anal and I think the ants are coming, and I'm trying to keep the house clean. I'm trying to put away toys as they're pulling out more toys. Dresser drawers are just laying open. I'm constantly throwing clothes back in them. I'm like, Leslie, please just let me go back to work. I can't do this anymore. But even parenting can feel like chasing after the wind. Day in and day out, the tasks are not all that glamorous. It can feel like hevel. Marriage. If we just go through Colossians 3 and Ephesians 5, we see Paul talks in both letters about this Christian life that we're called to live, and he goes on to say that all of this life is lived in the context of marriage and in light of parenting, and then he goes on to talk about work. But many of you guys have felt this feeling of hevel in the midst of your marriage. Anything and everything can become hevel. Work especially. Gallup did this research in 2013 and said this: the bulk of employees worldwide, 63%, are not engaged, meaning they lack motivation and are less likely to invest discretionary effort in organizational goals or outcomes. Just self-identify there if that's you. When it comes to work, do you lack motivation? How likely are you to invest discretionary effort beyond what you're required to do at work? 63% of people worldwide, 24% are actively disengaged, indicating that they're unhappy and unproductive at work and liable to spread negativity to coworkers. In rough numbers, this translates to 940 million not engaged and 340 million actively disengaged workers around the globe. 1.3 billion people, 87% of the workforce, not engaged or actively disengaged, explaining in research terms that they feel like work is hevel. Is that you? Are we part of the majority? At least you could take comfort in that, right? Only 13% of people in the workforce say that they're engaged in what they're doing, that they're invested in it, that they're passionate about it, that they're purposeful within it. Now the pastoral question: how does God feel about 40 hours of the week for 1.3 billion people around the world? Over 30 plus years of their life. The wisdom of Ecclesiastes tells us that chasing what can't be caught leaves us breathless. That if you continue to chase the wind, you will find yourself suffocating a slow and painful death at work. Your soul will die a little bit every day, because if you're chasing what can't be caught, you will be found breathless. Hevel and wind chasing, if I had to define it, I would say it's never having enough and always wanting more. Hevel, wind chasing, is never having enough and always wanting more. Some of you guys are runners. Some of you guys know that you watch the Olympics and you see these sprinters and they give everything they have. And at the moment they come across the finish line, they cruise because they're professionals, but then they just collapse and their muscles are burning and their lungs are compressed because they gave everything they had in the midst of that sprint. It's a deep, deep burn. And some of you guys are distance runners, and you know that over the course of time, mile 22, mile 23, there's a deep burn. Your lungs feel like they're closing in, and your legs feel like they can't go another inch. There's a deep and long burn to this race that we call life. And if you find yourself never having enough and always wanting more, you will be breathless on a daily sprint and a decades-long marathon. And you will come to the end of your work career and you will go, what was it all for? I think that there are 4 P's that Ecclesiastes 2 teaches us, 4 things that we pursue that are hevel. Possessions and pleasure. If you look at Ecclesiastes 2 verses 1 through 11, the teacher tells us, I had everything I wanted. I withheld from myself nothing that would feel good. I didn't withhold any pleasures from myself. I accumulated more than anybody had ever come before me. I had it all. I possessed the world, and everything that felt good, I just went after. And you know what he calls it all? Do you remember? I showed you Ecclesiastes 2:11. Vanity and striving after the wind. There's nothing new under the sun. Whenever Ecclesiastes was written, and wherever we're sitting here in 2018, vanity and striving after the wind. There's nothing new under the sun. Here we are. If we go after possessions and pleasure, you will find yourself burning with this deep burn. You will find yourself breathless. If you're going after prestige and power, the author goes on to say, the teacher says in verses 18 through 26, not only did I have everything, I owned it. There was nobody above me. My greatness surpassed all of my peers. No one's name was as high as my name. No one was as successful as me. No one had as much prestige as me. Nobody claimed as many titles as me. Nobody in the world was as powerful as me. It's why a lot of people think that the teacher is the voice of Solomon, greatest king in the history of Israel in terms of possessions, wealth, prestige, and power. A lot of people attribute this book to Solomon's wisdom. And what does he tell us in the midst of all this pursuing of prestige and power? It's all hevel. What am I saying? Guys, this is nothing new. It goes all the way back to Genesis 3. Work is Genesis 3:6 on repeat. You remember the temptation with the fruit? What does it say? It says that the fruit was pretty. It looked good. That it was pleasing to the eye. It said it was practical. It was good for food. And it said that it was powerful. It was desired to make one like God. It was pretty. It was powerful. It was practical. And Eve took it. Because even when she had everything, she didn't have enough. Anything and everything can be turned into Hevel. And what does it say in Genesis 3:17? What's the result of this? It's the curse of toil. By the sweat of your brow, you're going to work the ground. Dust you are, to dust you'll return. There will be pain in the midst of your labor. All the days of your life, you will painfully toil. If you are chasing after the wrong things, you will feel the pain, the sweat, the toil, the full weight of the curse. And here's what I believe. I believe that most of us, most people, 87% of the workforce is moving from dust to dust, not from dust to glory. From dust we came, and to dust we'll return. Wisdom cries out from the book of Ecclesiastes and says, stop chasing the wind. Stop chasing the wind. Every step that we have taken east of Eden has been Hevel. Every step that we take in pursuit of the wrong things, every time we chase the wind, it takes us a little further away from God. And we've got some examples of that tonight that we want to share with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Burns, and I have found that pursuing possessions can be like chasing the wind. I left State Farm at 35. I'm one of the few that escaped in my middle ages. I went into a technology field, technology sales. While it offered financial rewards and lots of excitement, it was very money-focused. It is very money-focused. I'm still in it. In my 40s, I began to be fixated on how much is enough to retire, because I was pursuing the wrong things. I was thinking about the wrong things. And I realized through a class that I took here at Eastview, a legacy class, that I had the wrong pursuit. I was fixated on how much is enough, and it was always a little bit more. Rather than my focus being on the legacy that I could leave with my family and giving and the overflow giving and opportunity that I had with my work, it was always just about the next quarter. You know, we live 90-day lives in sales. It's like, how can I get to my number? How can I make the commission check? So I realized it's not about winning the rat race. It's not about reaching a point where you have enough. It was about getting off this treadmill of work and stress, and I just changed my perspective on this class by digging into Scripture. Really changed the way I looked at work. Constantly pursuing possessions will lead you to being possessed. You'll never feel like you have enough. The stuff I now pursue is the stuff I believe that will last.
Hi, my name is Lisa Burton. I have found that expecting work to be pleasurable can be like chasing the wind. Pleasure comes from something that makes you feel good, something that generates positive feelings. My struggle was to never feel pleasure at work, and that's why work had felt like chasing the wind. I had been the office manager at my company for over 10 years. I'm a great right-brained administrator, but in the last 3 to 4 years, I had been pressed into an accounting finance mold. By nature, I'm a people person who does not enjoy numbers, but who has a good work ethic. I learned to perform my tasks to the best of my abilities while wearing a smile at work. But I noticed my smile was fading at home. Being in a position you are not matched for can create a number of negative effects in your life. Last summer, after my husband made the claim that I was not the same person he married, I was diagnosed with moderate depression and anxiety, and that definitely woke me up. I experienced the absence of pleasure at work, and it did not bring me joy nor grow my spirit. Chasing after pleasure at work will leave you breathless.
Hello, my name is Wally Marciniak, and I have found that prestige that comes from work can be like the wind. I've been in the workforce for a long time, for over 38 years, and I've had a lot of success in the various things that I have done in my career. For the last 17 years, I've been employed by a large software company, and I've had great success. winning awards, getting recognition at the highest executive levels, going on trips all over the world. Over the last year, my job has changed, and the majority of my internal support network has left the company. The thought of not having a job scares me and leaves me feeling very alone at work. God has a plan for all of us. It would be nice if you could get a glimpse, maybe just a peek behind the curtain to see what he's got planned for you. You ever wonder that? Just to see what lies ahead. But that's really where your faith comes in, and knowing he has a plan for you. I'll admit, it's not easy at times. Fear creeps in, but a prayer goes a long way, saying, you have this, Lord. Help me. Please help me. Help me see the big picture. Help me listen better. I recognize my failures at not trusting him with everything, and this has helped me and my wife, Karen, deal with things and challenges on a day-to-day basis. She has been a rock that I can lean on, and it helps us not obsess about the future, but being thankful for the blessings he's given us for our faith, our family, and our church. The situation I face at work has really kind of opened a door for me to be a witness and share my faith. Praying with people in the hallway, talking to people about Christ on a conference call. Try that. People can say you should just blatantly trust in the Lord when you run into somebody, and they hear, just trust in God. But until you do it, until you believe it, it's hard to tell somebody that. As you move forward with your career, and I with mine, be thankful for what you have and trust in our Lord, because you know a curveball will come your way. And always know he has a plan for you. Sometimes it takes a major change for you to realize who you are and what's really important. Chasing after prestige will leave you breathless.
Hi, my name is Tracy Grist, and I have found that the pursuit of power is like chasing after the wind. As I reflected on Ecclesiastes 2 and my own personal story, I realized that the pursuit of power is something that has been interwoven throughout my career as a teacher for over the past 15 years. In 2004, when I received my first teaching job in Lake Forest, this was my dream job, surrounded by wealth, affluence, NBA players as parents, CEOs, which made the pursuit of power enticing. This was a very unique elementary school environment because the teachers were highly educated. Most of them were working on doctorates, and out of about 30 staff members, only 6 had children, and most were not married. The pursuit of power and a comfortable lifestyle was planted in my heart during my teaching time there. After 3 years of teaching, I decided to pursue a master's in administration in hopes of being a principal. I began my pursuit of my master's in 2009 while teaching full-time, juggling a newborn, and in the midst of my husband starting a job that had on-call hours, and not to mention we have no family in town. Although the timing probably wasn't the best, I continued to chase the wind. I had to finish graduate school on time, and of course I had to have a perfect GPA. Once again, meaningless. I put my pursuit of the next step in my career above my health, my balance of time, and my relationship with God. I finished my master's in 2011, and I went on bed rest with my second child 2 weeks after graduation. This bed rest left me wondering, what's the point? Does this really matter? I've been tempted to apply for many administrative openings over the past 6 years, but what I've realized is that right now I'm not called to be a principal. The pursuit of power has become secondary to gratitude for where I am right now. One of my favorite sayings is, gratitude turns what you have into enough. I am grateful to be entrusted with teaching first graders each day, and God is not done with that chapter of my story. Our culture would look at my choice to stay where I am as a weakness. Maybe I'm not ready to be a principal or I can't do it. But that's not the truth. I just don't want to spend my time and energy chasing after promotion or raise when God's called me to be present right where I am today. What I have learned is that the pursuit of power is truly meaningless if you are fulfilled and being used where you are right now. Chasing after power will leave you breathless.
Thank you. As we were putting this night together, even just thinking about it started to feel kind of like, ugh. But that's kind of how Ecclesiastes feels. It's kind of how work feels. And a lot of times we want to polish everything up and make it shiny and bright, but the reality is 87% of the workforce experiences this, feels this way, isn't engaged in the places where we work. And somehow the wisdom of Ecclesiastes speaks into the midst of this and says, stop chasing the wind. In fact, the whole point of the critic or the cynical voice of Ecclesiastes is to bring us to the end of ourselves so that we realize none of these things are going to satisfy our soul. None of these things are the things for which we were created. None of these things are going to bring purpose and meaning to your life. And yet, our careers fall into these 4 lanes so easily, don't they? Whether you're in education or business, big business or small business, no matter where you are, it's so easy to slide into the rat race, as one of our stories shared. It's Genesis 3:6 on repeat and Genesis 3:17 as a result. But in the midst of Genesis 2, 3, and 5, you hear a couple little verses, and I just want to share them with you as we kind of turn the corner. The gift of God shows up multiple times in the book of Ecclesiastes. It says that the gift of God empowers us to rejoice in our toil. Listen to this in chapter 2, verse 24. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or have enjoyment? How can you have joy in the midst of your work apart from God? If your faith is separated from your work, it will not be enjoyable. The gift of God empowers us to rejoice in the midst of our toil. If you go on, it talks a little bit more about this. That phrase, there's nothing better, shows up again in chapter 3, verse 12. I perceive that there's nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all of his toil. This is God's gift to man. God empowers us to rejoice in the midst of our work, and God makes our work enjoyable. He is a joyful being. If you go over just to chapter 5, it says this, behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. This is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept this lot and rejoice in his toil. This is the gift of God. Verse 20, for he will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him, I love this phrase, God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. I've often been thinking lately and praying lately about how we talk about God as this, he is love. His very nature is love. His very essence is love. Everything about God is love. But God is also joy. Think about this. God is the most joyful being in the universe. He is joy. And he longs for us to rejoice and enjoy our toil. He doesn't change the work. He changes our hearts. It's still hard, it's still cursed, it's still by the sweat of our brow, but it's actually enjoyable. The grace of God is joyful toil. The grace of God is joyful toil. You could go to work tomorrow occupied with joy. To me, that sounds like life in the Spirit. Joy is one of the Spirit's fruits. Do you remember? Love, joy, second in the list. Love, joy. Can you believe that? God is the most joyful being in the universe, and he longs to share his joy with us. As we abide in him, as we rest in him, as we work in his name, the breath of God fills our lungs, and we can press on. We can press on through the sprints of the day, and we can press on through the decades of our careers, because our joy is found in the midst of that toil. God isn't changing our work, he's changing our hearts. If you will seek the Spirit, you can reverse the curse. If you will seek the Spirit, you can reverse the curse. In 2004, the Boston Red Sox won the World Series. You guys remember this? Cardinal fans do. 86 years, the Boston Red Sox had been cursed. The curse of the Bambino. They sold Babe Ruth 86 years ago to the New York Yankees. They had won 5 World Series prior to that deal. Then they didn't win another one for 86 years. In fact, in the American League Championship Series of 2004, they were playing those Yankees, and they were down 0-3. They were 3 games behind in the series. All the Yankees had to do was win one of the last 4 games in the series, and the Yankees would have went to the World Series again, and the evil empire would have prevailed. But those Boston Red Sox, beards and all, came back from down 3 games. They did the impossible. It had never been done. They came back. They beat not just any team. They beat the Yankees, the team who took the Bambino from them, the team who placed the curse on them. They reversed the curse, and then they went on to sweep the Cardinals. That's why some of you guys remember that year. 4 straight wins. And then another 4 straight wins, World Series champs. They reversed the curse against all odds. I'm telling you tonight, if you will seek the Spirit, you can reverse the curse of toil in your life. The wisdom of Ecclesiastes says to stop chasing the wind. God would rather change your heart than change your toil. He's the most joyful being in the universe, and he longs to share that joy with you. Don't you want to rejoice and enjoy your work? What's your plan for doing that? Tonight we want to create some space for you to seek the Spirit. So would you stand with me? We're going to sing a few songs. And there's some truths, some really powerful truths in the midst of these songs. But what I want you to do for the next few minutes is to seek the Spirit, to have a conversation with God like Tommy talked about. Listen for what he wants to speak into your work journey. Because God has a vision for your vocation. He has destined you. You are his workmanship. He has crafted you, created you, and placed you in this place to do good work. Good work does not mean all the Christian stuff minus your job. Your work, your job is included in that. There are good works for God that God has for us here in Bloomington Normal. If we would seek his Spirit, we too might see the impossible happen. We too might change the statistics. We too might be part of shaping the world for good. And so I ask you, as you think about all this, tomorrow at work, will you seek the Spirit or will you chase the wind?